Okay, we're live once again for the second time on October 14th, 2022. Our first show this evening was cut short, apparently by accident, by Miss G. Apparently, there was a misunderstanding, and Miss G has returned to be a co host of our show and to work for the law offices of Vincent Davis. Ooh.
Why
All
did you
right.
just tell them it was a Halloween prank instead of you just say, woo? Mr. Davis, I swear, you have a sense of humor there, buddy. God
So,
bless you.
what's going on with the hairdo tonight?
Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Just leave me alone.
Okay, I'm attorney Vincent Davis, and this is The Secret, How to Fight CPS and Win. I'm joined by my very special co-host, Ms.
Miss.
Miss G, Georgette Truin. Everybody, let's give a round of applause that Miss G is back in the house. A little misunderstanding there in communication with Miss G. Happens every
That's what
day.
I said. Do you see that's what I said? See? Do you see that? She said, but I knew you were lying.
Miss Payne, only if you knew. Only if dealing with a diva is, it's kind of,
I'm
trying.
not a diva. Do I look like a diva right
And
now?
our other special co-host, Miss Cassandra Woodard. Cassandra, welcome again to our second version of our 10-14-22 show. Now, before were so rudely interrupted, we were talking about your case. And I was about to tell you that you should file that 388 petition ASAP.
Mm-hmm.
Have you prepared the 388, or has your attorney prepared the 388 petition?
She said that she would start preparing it, and I actually emailed her recently to tell her, forget my whole case plan. Like, I already have half of it done, and I want you to continue to follow my 388 and not worry about the last part of my case plan and just do it anyway because it needs to be done. And because she's like, oh, I think we should wait. I think we should wait because I don't want your stuff to go to waste. And I'm like, why are you keeping me from filing this 388? Basically, that's how I felt now that you told me that it just doesn't matter. And so I feel like she's trying to stop me from filing my 388.
You can probably assist her by starting to fill out the form yourself.
Yeah, she also said that she'd help me file my 388, or she could file it for me, but she'd rather file it for me if I finish my case plan. And I said, well, I don't want to finish my case plan. I don't need to finish my case plan, I feel like. And she's like, well, your child's attorney might deny your 388 because of the fact that you didn't finish your case plan.
Well, it's not up to your child's attorney. The most your child's attorney is to be against you in the 388. The 388 is decided by the judge.
Yeah, she said that, but they might chime in and say something where it would cause it not to.
That would be true whether you finished it or not. You know what I think would be a good idea? If you prepared one and gave it to your attorney to review. And if you had it finished for her or almost finished for your attorney, maybe she'd be less likely to say, oh, I don't think you should file it now. What do you think of that idea?
Yeah, that would be great if I knew how to do it. I don't know how to do it.
You know what? I'm going to send you a 388 that I filed. I'm going to black out the names and the case number so you won't know where it's from or who it's about. But you'll be able to see what needs to be put into the form and the additional attachments that need to be put in the form. And you can just copy it. And then You go and you send that, of course, to your attorney for her
Mhm.
review, and then she can do whatever she wants with it. She can change it, she can modify it, she can delete things, she can add things, but at least you've given her something, that she can work with, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I think I would advise you to do, just as a, you know, give talking about your case with you on different occasions. What kind of visits do you have, monitored or unmonitored?
I'm monitored right now, and I'm supposed to get them 2 hours a week monitored visits, but since they live so far away and the person who has to do the monitored visits lives in the same town I do and she also works, and they assigned her to do my monitored visits, which was their ex-foster mom who they're going back to. So they're coming back to the town I live in, but they were in Riverside County and I'm not in Riverside County. And so I was getting to see them maybe once a month for like a whole day instead of 2 hours a week.
Well, are they placed with a relative or a family friend?
They're one's in a placement and one's in a foster family home.
So you should also talk to your attorney about having the children placed with a relative or family friend in the same home, because the bond between siblings is very important and it is recognized by the law. Also, there's a code section that says that your child should not be placed outside your county unless there's certain, I think, exceptions. And I
Well,
can't.
apparently the exceptions is that my one daughter, okay, my one daughter kept on running away from her placements, so they couldn't find a placement in my county that would take her because of how many times she ran away. The other one got put into another placement, and the reason why they got separated is because they said that they were fighting too much, but they are siblings. They were fighting like siblings, not fighting like fist fighting or anything. They were fighting like siblings, so they decided to split them up. And that's when a lot of stuff started going bad, is when they split them up, I feel like. And so now when they do get back to the town I'm in here soon, they're coming back to their very first foster mom, and I've known her before the case even started. So thank God it's kind of like a family or close friend
Okay.
of ours.
Okay. Well,
So
that's good.
she's been involved in the case throughout the whole case. And before then, she used to take them to camp and stuff.
Okay. So, just for the audience, I want to repeat, the problem is you're well into your case, months in, or maybe even years into your case. Your children they still haven't been replaced, and you want to know how to get your child back. So, I should probably title this "How to Get Your Child Back Post Family Reunification." And the first thing that you need to do is you need to speak to your attorney. Try to develop a plan, a strategic plan, implement the plan, and that plan is going to include filing a 388 petition here in California. I am sure that other states have something akin to the 388 here in California, and you need to talk to your attorney to make sure that you're filing the right type of form. This is a problem because sometimes children languish in foster homes when they really should be returned to the parent. And sometimes there's really no good reason to have the child stay in the foster home. I mean, your children are like teenagers, right?
They've
So
been doing this for 5 years.
okay. So, you know, they're probably too old that no one wants to adopt them. And they're probably, more easily protecting themselves. And I would probably guess, just from knowing you and talking to you, that, whatever problem there was at the beginning, it no longer is in existence because of the age of the children and because it's just been so long. Now,
Mhm.
foster care is like diminishing returns. The longer you stay in foster care, generally, I won't say in every, you know, thing, but generally, it starts to become a negative thing with respect to the child, because there is something to say about people being placed, children being placed with family. And when you're not with family, these starts, I think, some type of
Hmm.
emotional or psychological problems with children regarding attachment and regarding the ability, to be wanted in that core, that nuclear group. Um, the other night we were talking about problems with foster care, and it basically replaced the orphanage system. But there are significant problems with foster care. I mean, no matter who the foster parent is, generally, they don't have the same type of connection or affection that they do for their own family with these non-related children. So they're kind of like they're being babysit, and I know Miss G will disagree with me. I'm not saying that every foster care or foster person is bad. I'm not saying that. And of course, you just told us, Cassandra, that this foster parent is almost like being in the family. But I'm talking about generally speaking, foster parents, just generally speaking, sometimes there's problems, and it's because the child's not related to them. There's no affinity, there's no connection emotionally, psychologically, you know? So there's just this problem sometimes of the child being in this strange place. Now, granted, when children are placed in foster homes, over time, sometimes a bond or a connection does occur. But in my opinion, it's not like having a family member. You know, um, I did a case this year, it ended this year in Los Angeles County, and it ended with the mother getting her children back. But the interesting thing was these children were placed with a family that knew the mother before the case started. And during the case, the mother and the foster parents became, for lack of a better word, enemies for many different reasons. And, it wasn't something that was became an issue during the case, except for towards the end when the mother got the children back. And then when the mother got the children back, the kids were, a little bit older. I think they were 11 or 12. And when they came back, they started telling their mom about incidences of abuse that occurred in the foster home. Now, it wasn't sexual abuse, although I have heard many stories about foster children being sexually abused. Their abuse was more of physical abuse and one of emotional abuse. Apparently, the foster father, and allegedly, the foster father, had a different way of disciplining than probably the social worker would allow if the social worker knew it. And it was physical discipline. And it wasn't necessarily, go get my belt, I'm going to whoop you. It might be, a slap on the head, right? It might be, a sock on the chest. It might be a sock on the arm. And when this becomes abuse and you leave bruises, according to these kids, that's a problem. And then sometimes, how they're talked to. Remember, these kids have been allegedly or were abused. They've been snatched out of their home and placed in, with strangers. And then sometimes these people talk to these children in a way that is just demeaning and causing some type of maybe emotional abuse upon the child. For example, I remember a case one time where the foster mother had been accused of abusing a child and emotionally abusing the child. And the foster mother, when her deposition was taken, she denied all of the abuse, but during her deposition, she cursed. She cursed, just like a sailor. And imagine if she was doing this at a deposition while being recorded, how she must have treated the children when she wasn't, when nobody was watching. So, it can become a serious thing. And we just think sometimes foster parents are doing the right thing and treating these kids the right way. And it's not true. How many perfect parents do you know? Right? I don't know any. I wasn't a perfect parent. Right? do we actually think that these foster parents are going to be perfect in raising children that aren't even theirs? I don't think so. Look, here's a comment I think we should read. Eric Santos, and I think Miss G paid for this, but we'll read it anyway. Hi, Miss G. You look beautiful as always. Oh, Mr. Davis, you had me worried for a minute. We love Miss G to the moon and back. Eric, we just had a little miscommunication. Okay, very true. Hey, Miss G, did you have something you wanted to add tonight, or are you just gonna?
Yeah. So I had a call today, which it's the same story, just different people, different county. The mother and the father were accused of domestic violence, and they were just watching a stupid game, and they got into it by their favorite team. The neighbor called the police. The police came, saw nothing's going on. Then they reported them to the Department of Child Services. The first social worker told them it's okay to co-parent and it's okay for you guys to communicate to co-parent, but you guys cannot live in the same house right now until the investigation is done. However, that first social worker that told them that was changed to another social worker. And because the parents were speaking on the phone about the children, she said that they failed to protect from one another and she held them accountable. And then because of that phone call, she removed the children before a complete investigation was made. So, what's your thought on that? What advice would you give them?
Have they been to court yet?
Not yet.
And when is their court date?
They don't know. The kids were removed today.
Oh. Well, they should be consulting with an attorney to develop a plan of attack, a strategy, and implement it for that very first hearing, which is called the detention hearing. How old are the kids?
2 and 5.
Do you know if the children were removed with a warrant or without a warrant?
Without a warrant.
Well, that's a problem. That's a problem.
The social worker told them they're going to give them a warrant later.
Yeah, that's not how it works.
Yeah, I know.
Somehow.
Well, they asked me to bring it up on the show today because they did complete an agreement with us, and they wanted your feedback on their rights and what have you.
Do you mind in the private chat typing the name of the county?
Yes.
Okay. Removed without a warrant. That's I wish I had hoped. I see that type of thing wasn't being done anymore. Now the law is in the United States, and more specifically in California, social workers can't remove a child without a court order or warrant unless they have exigent circumstances. Exigent means emergency. Now, what Miss G just told me about the facts of this case doesn't constitute emergency. Okay? So what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to go to a judge and ask the judge for a warrant. If the judge won't give them a warrant, they can't take your child away from you. And if they do get a warrant, they can come out and detain the child. But the problem is, under the facts you've told me, unless you've left something out or unless the client left something out, it doesn't amount to an emergency circumstance, right?
Um,
You
right.
know, over the years, there have been significant lawsuits against different counties, and including the county you just typed in the private chat. So I'm really surprised about that, where, the county has lost millions of dollars for doing, warrantless removal of children.
But I thought the money was coming from the federal government, though. That they doesn't affect them. They don't care if people sue them or not.
Well, here's what happens. The money is eventually, in my opinion, reimbursed by the federal government. But there are judgments against the county and the county social workers if the case goes to trial and they lose. So there's never any accountability because that social worker who did the illegal removal will never have to pay anything. The county that you typed in the private chat will be the county that pays for everyone. And the county then will move to the federal government to try to get that money back, or we'll just take it from their annual budget for CPS cases and pay off the parents in this case, and the child.
There was something that was said when the worker came with the police. They told the parents that the mother, rather, the father was not there. They told the mother that we are the Department of Child Services. We are the government. We can do whatever we want. Can they say something like that?
Can they? Yeah, they can just move their lips and say anything they want.
So they can be held accountable for something like that.
Oh, they definitely can be held accountable.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, if this is what really happened, I'd like to speak to them because they definitely have a civil rights Fourth Amendment lawsuit. It's tantamount to what's called in criminal cases an illegal search and seizure. You can't take people's kids away unless without a court order or unless you have a really emergency circumstance. I want to tell you there's a case that I'm thinking of right now that happened in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the Federal Court of Appeals. It's the court right above or right below the United States Supreme Court. And this is a case that happened, I think it was San Bernardino. I forget the case or the county, but these are the facts. Someone had called in a report that a father was sexually abusing his daughter. And the social worker came out, investigated, and decided for whatever reason that she wasn't going to remove the child. There were no emergency circumstances. The social worker goes back to her office and speaks to her speaks to her supervisor. And about 3 days later, and the supervisor says, go out and detain that child. It's an emergency circumstance. And by the way, don't wait for the court order or the court warrant being issued. They go out and they detain the child. Now, the father filed a lawsuit for civil rights violations in the trial court. And the trial court said that we're going to dismiss your case, Mr. Father, because we believe that they had emergency circumstances. They thought the kid was being sexually abused. All right. So on its face, you might say, okay, I can see that. Well, the father's case was thrown out of court before he could even get to trial. The father decided that he wanted to appeal that decision to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. He appealed it, and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals said, no, trial court, you made a mistake. These people didn't have, talking about CPS, an emergency circumstance because by definition, they waited 3 days before they did anything. Emergency circumstances means something right now is happening and we got to take this kid. We can't wait for a court order. And what the court said was, in those 3 days that passed before you took the kid, you could have easily, walked next door to the court and applied for a warrant. And possibly you would have been granted that warrant under these circumstances, but you weren't. And you went out and detained a child without a warrant or emergency circumstances. Therefore, the father can sue you. And the father did sue them. And as I recall, the case settled for a very large amount of money. Now, the interesting thing is there was a second suit brought by the child who was the subject of that detention. And that case went up on appeal as well, and the child won as well. And I think, as I recall, that case was also settled for a large sum of money. So here's a pro tip. That this is just my opinion. A lot of people share this opinion. Some don't. But when I represent a family, I sue on behalf of the parents first. And once that case is resolved and you learn all the ins and outs of, the case and the facts, then I come back and I sue on behalf of the child or the children, because they have a longer time to file a lawsuit. So theoretically, a child has until they're 20 to bring a lawsuit, even if the incident happened when they were 10. Okay, so that's just a pro tip. And the other pro tip is, and I've just learned this from experience over the years, when the counties settle a case, they have value given to a case, not counting the number of plaintiffs. So you have mother, father, and the two children, they're going to get a set amount of money in a settlement. Now, if it goes to trial, you can get a lot more money. But if you bring the cases separately, the adults and then later the children, you can almost double the amount of money you can get by way of settlement of a civil rights case. Okay, so a lot of people say, well, why aren't you bringing the lawsuit for me and my child at the same time? And that's what I explained to them. And the other thing you get to do is you get to learn everything on the kid's case, right? You get to find out all the defenses and what the social worker is going to say on the parent's case, and then you'll know how to defend or how to exploit that when you bring the second lawsuit for the children. Have I ever explained that to you, Miss G?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's just a pro tip.
Okay. What advice would you give somebody else that had their child removed from her because her mother-in-law does not like her? She doesn't think she's good enough for her son, and she reported her to Child Protective Services. That the baby's only 3 months old, and the mother was having problems breastfeeding the baby. The mother-in-law kept harassing her and devaluing her, basically telling her she doesn't know how to be a mother. Um, the husband didn't really defend his wife, so he allowed his mother to do whatever and say whatever she wanted. So, anyways, the wife said, if I'm not good enough, then I should be leaving or moving somewhere else.
Okay, so I'm not
They called.
following that
She
question.
called Child Protective Services against her,
Hold
and
on. We're going to use the rule. We're not going to use pronouns. Okay, because there's too many he's and she's in this story. And if you're
the
not telling,
mother-in-law called Department of Child Services to tell them she's an unfit mother. They came.
well, what to tell?
Mhm.
So the mother-in-law called and reported her daughter-in-law as being an unfit mother. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Were they all living together?
Yes.
Okay. And what allegations specifically? Because they wouldn't have come out if they just said she's unfit. They would have said, how is she unfit? Do you know what was said?
She doesn't know how to breastfeed the baby correctly.
Okay. There must have been something else said, because that's not a CPS type case. You don't know how to feed the
She's not
breastfeed the baby.
she's not breastfeeding the baby correctly, and the baby is not getting enough milk.
Okay. Um, and you saying that was the only basis to detain the child?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I will bet $1 that when that case is filed, whether it's true facts or not true facts, the social worker will add something to those allegations. And it might be a history, it might be domestic violence, it might be past drug use, something, because what you just stated, even the worst social worker in the world will know that's not sufficient to keep take the baby away. I mean, that's almost grounds for, a civil rights lawsuit. And these people, although they might be not trustworthy, they're not stupid. Never underestimate a social worker. I mean, I tell people all the time, don't talk to your social worker without me, either on the phone or in person. Because if you say ABC, it might be reported as XYZ. Or even more frequent, it'll be reported as BCD. Just a little bit different, but just enough to get you on the hook. So if you tell me that's all that was said, I think they're going to be surprised when they go to court. Have they gone to court on the case yet?
No, they
Yeah.
haven't.
I think they're going to be shocked when they go to court and see what the allegations are. And somebody told me not too long ago, the police reported us because we had a domestic violence incident. And when I walked in on the social worker interviewing my kids, the social worker was asking her, "Does daddy touch you between your legs?" So social workers start, they're trained to do this, right? They come out for one thing, but they cover every possible form of abuse. People say, "Well, I don't have any problem talking with a social worker," or even worse, "Oh yeah, they can talk to my kid. It's no biggie." You have no idea what this social worker is going to say to this kid. You have no idea what your child's going to answer. A lot of children can be easily misled. Easily. Hey, your mother really hits you all the time, right? Yeah, yeah. As she's being handed a piece of candy. I'm a big proponent in social workers wearing the body cams that the police, are required to wear. Because I think these cases will be significantly different if every interview were tape recorded.
That is true.
Not just for the reason of memory, but for the reason of twisting something. Have you ever, I want to ask Miss G, Miss Cassandra, have you ever been interviewed and you said A, B, C, D, E, and it came back X, Y, L, Z, P? I mean, you just completely misquoted. Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah. Yes,
And,
it
and,
has.
and this probably happened to most people, not only in CPS cases, but just in life.
Yeah, in life in general, it happens
Yeah.
all the time.
Because the memory, the human memory is not perfect. And then if you combine that with the fact that, social workers trying to win a case and keep your kids, who knows what they're going to write? I mean, we've talked about it in the past week about different cases that I've been involved with where social workers, according to my clients, have outright lied. And then there are a lot of cases where somebody will tell me, I said something like that, but it's kind of twisted and taken out of context. And then, of course, it's used against you in court. You're just assuming the social worker is going to be 100% accurate on the interview when they're writing it down and reporting it to the court. Not true. Absolutely not true. Anyway, Miss G, what, sorry to interrupt you. Did you have another question about that fact pattern?
If they left the baby with the grandmother, and even though she's the one who made the allegations, obviously, Um, my question is, how can they? Well, I'm sure they can do whatever they want to do, but it makes no sense. They don't have a warrant, and can I say the name of the city, the county? I mean,
I prefer you don't.
okay, yeah, they didn't have a warrant for the removal, and I thought that they were supposed to have a hearing within 72 hours of removal.
That is the rule. The statute actually says 48, and then case law has extended it to 72. But COVID extended those times, right?
Mhm.
And I think the rationale was they didn't have enough personnel during COVID to, get these cases to court between 48 and 72 hours. But, things are opening back up or have opened a lot. And I think, CPS is still using those old rules because the quote unquote emergency hasn't expired yet, officially on paper. And I'm not saying that it should or shouldn't. I'm just saying, people are still operating under COVID conditions.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Um, what advice do you give parents that been promised by the workers reunification and the reunification stage, and then right during the reunification stage, um, they change social workers, and the other social workers, that number five social worker comes in and says, no, I'm not going to recommend reunification. You're not a good parent. You still need to do 6 more months of classes.
Okay,
Um,
what here I'm gonna give you the answer to that, and it's gonna be a short answer. Then I'm gonna answer Miss Payne's question that's been posted in the text, and then I'm gonna come back to your question. What I tell people is you must have a trial or a contested hearing to challenge any social worker's recommendation. Remember, I always say this, but I don't think it sinks in. Social workers don't make decisions. They make recommendations. The judge makes the decision. However, if the social worker makes a recommendation and you and your attorney don't challenge it in court by way of a contested hearing or trial, the social worker's recommendation becomes the law of the land. And basically, essentially, she gets to make the decision because you failed to challenge it in the appropriate manner. Does that make sense?
it does make sense. However, the social workers and the court appointed attorney that they have are telling them that take the deal, give up your rights. If you go to trial, you're going to lose. Don't do the trial. Do not go to trial. You're going to
Okay.
lose.
So here's my thought on that. Every lawyer that I know practices law in different ways, right? Some are more aggressive, some are less aggressive, some are medium. But if you're going to lose your kids, it's always been my belief you should go down fighting because you never know what's going to come out at the time of trial when witnesses get on the stand. Social workers are good bluffers. Good bluffers. I don't know if you've ever played poker, but social workers are good bluffers. Now, before we continue on with that topic, I want to answer this question by Deidre Payne. And this is going back to a topic we were just talking about. If they didn't have a warrant, then shouldn't the kids be returned home? Miss Payne, I can't tell you, but that makes so much sense. There's one problem. That's not the law. If you were in criminal court and your Fourth Amendment rights were violated, the evidence would be thrown out. Not in juvenile court. If they take your kid without a warrant, a proper warrant, the only remedy you have is to sue them for civil rights violation in another court. Now, I pause there for a second because I want you to think how ridiculous that sounds. But that's the law. See, the law isn't always common sense, and everybody out there thinks that it is. It's not. The fact that your Fourth Amendment rights were violated by the social worker is not even an issue or concern for the juvenile court judge. Nothing. Should it be? I would say yes, but it's not the law. And Georgette or Miss G, if it's not the law, what do?
You fight.
You vote to change the law.
Right.
Okay. But going back to your topic, Miss G, about, these types of cases and what social workers do. Social workers get away with a lot because you never challenge them. You never have the trial. You never put the social worker on the stand to cross-examine them. Now, all of that takes additional time and effort and money. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Just doesn't happen. Just doesn't happen. On Monday, I was hired over the weekend to go do a trial Monday morning. And I showed up, and the attorney on the other side thought my client was coming to court to the trial without a lawyer. And I introduced myself, and the lawyer says, "Well, are you ready to go to trial?" I said, "Oh yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to go to trial." He was shocked. First of all, he didn't plan on going to trial at all because he thought my client was showing up without a lawyer. And then, we were in court, and the judge says, "Well, how long do you need, Mr. Davis, for your half of the trial?" I said, "About 3 hours, 4 hours." That's the reaction I got from the judge. Like, oh shit.
What advice do you give people that violate court orders? For example, there's a restraining order on the father, and the mother is supposed to be away from him, and he's supposed to be away from the mom. However, the father goes to the mother's house demanding to see the kids. The social worker are following them, or have somebody, watch them. Notice that the father came to the house, even though he forced himself in. They blamed the mother for allowing him to come in. So he's in violation of the court order. He wasn't arrested, but yet they removed the kids from the mom.
So what can who do?
What can the mother do? Because the mother said that they gave the children.
Time out. I'm going to tell you. What can the mother do?
Mhm.
Have a contested hearing and challenge everything. Get on the stand and testify. If she doesn't present evidence, including her own testimony, she's going to lose.
But the court-appointed attorney does not want to do that.
Okay.
He told her she's going to lose. So
Okay.
what?
Okay, good. She's going to lose. Great. Go down fighting. Go down in flames. And see if the court-appointed attorney is right. I'm never 100% right. Right? Did you know that, Miss G? I'm not always right.
Absolutely.
Court-appointed attorney is not always right either. So when you say, what should you do? You should fight.
Ah,
You should fight.
yeah.
Okay. You know what? I noticed we lost Miss Cassandra, and it is past our time. I want to thank everybody for watching. Our show tomorrow is at 9 a.m. in the morning. Saturday and Sunday shows 9 a.m. Generally, We don't have Miss G on the show on Saturdays. She's usually tied up. Are you joining tomorrow morning or no?
No, Sunday I am.
Okay, very good. Then Miss G, we'll see you Sunday. And tomorrow, I don't know if Miss Cassandra's going to be there with us, but tomorrow I'm going to have a show dedicated to what you should do to win your very first hearing in juvenile court, the detention hearing. I'm going to give you some pro tips that you can talk about with your lawyer before going into court and what you should do during the hearing. Okay? Thank you, everyone. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Good night, all.